Thank you for joining us on the Moving Forward panel. I am Endia Beal, a photographer, curator, and author of the book Performance Review. This book really focuses on the struggles and uncertainties of women of color within the corporate sector, but more importantly, using art as a teaching tool for diversity and inclusion. I'm so excited to be here today. Thank you, Sony, for having such a timely and important conversation. I am joined by three amazing experts, photographers in the field. I'm going to read their bios briefly, and then we're going to jump into this conversation. The first photographer, ladies first, Dr. Tomayia Colvin. She's been photographing high school seniors for more than 9 years and was a classroom teacher for more than 10 years. She's been an educator on Creative Live, WPPI, Imaging USA, B&H Depth and Field, United Hosts by Showit, among others. And Dr. Colvin was recently named a Sony Artisan of Imagery. Thank you so much, Dr. Colvin, for being here. And I'm going to call you Tomayia if it's okay.
That's totally fine.
All right, perfect. Now, Jermaine Horton is a Chicago-based wedding and portrait photographer. He's also president and founder of the Art of Confidence Project, which empowers and restores the confidence of our youth. He is also a Sony Artisan of Imagery, ambassador for Westcott Lighting, Stella Pro Lighting, Fundy Design, and SLR Lounge. Jermaine, thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited to learn more about the Art of Confidence. And last but definitely not least is Eli Reed, a Magnum-based photographer, has been with Magnum since 1983. Eli has been on assignment and done productions for major publications such as National Geographic, Life, Time Magazine, People, Newsweek, The New York Times, The Washington Post, Vogue, Harper's Bazaar, so many more to name. Eli is a lecturer and has taught at the International Center for Photography, Columbia University, New York University, Harvard University, and he was also a Harvard University Nieman Fellow in 1983. He is also a professor at the University of Texas in Austin. Thank you so much, Eli, for joining this conversation. I want to encourage you all to follow these artists. On Instagram. I'm a strong believer that in order for us to uplift women and artists of color, we have to uplift their platforms. So right now, I encourage you all to take out your phones, search for these individuals on Instagram, follow them so that you can continue to be advocates for change and also hear their voices and their stories and see their beautiful pictures. You know, when I was thinking about putting this panel together, I started thinking about Fannie Lou Hamer, the civil rights activist, and her famous quote of, "I am sick and tired of being sick and tired." I feel like there's been so many of these type of conversations around representation within the field. So we can talk about, we're going to start this conversation off honestly, thinking about the death of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, we're going to say their names, other individuals, and this kind of change, this movement that is happening right now in the United States. Many people and institutions are thinking about their role in systematic inequalities, but more importantly, thinking about their lack of role in creating changes within our institutions, specifically within our field. So to start this conversation, I want to know from you guys, what are the initial first steps do you think we need to take in order to create more representation for people of color, for women within this industry? What are some initial first steps? And we'll start with Tomayia. What do you think? What are some of the first steps we need to take?
I think the first step that we need to take is definitely having a listening ear. And I want to say, like when we say that there's a problem, like really actually hear us. And not actually just kind of skim over and say, well, this really only applies to you all and it really doesn't affect my life. But I think initially first changes would definitely be listening and hearing what we're saying and some of the things that we are actually experiencing.
Okay, awesome. Jermaine, how about you? What do you think?
I think when it comes to men, I think, especially for me, I can speak for me. I'm a huge advocate for women and their rights. One of my favorite photographers is Kesha Lambert. Absolutely stunning and amazing, her work. And I believe we just can't sit on the sidelines and not say anything or not do anything.
Right.
So me as a Black man and as just as a man, period, I'm always wanting to amplify women's voices. I want to make sure that they're heard. I even started in my own company to make sure that I hired amazing Black women to be a part of the staff and part of our group that I can mentor and train. Because I just feel that in this world today, it's our responsibility to advocate for ourselves and be there and be present, not just to say that we want to do these things, but actually be present.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And Eli, what are your
Well,
thoughts?
one thing is, I think about this a lot, is that particularly recently, the little discovery that the countries that are doing well with the coronavirus are run by women, and the countries that are doing badly are run by men. So that'll alone will tell you things. I worked in a hospital for a long time when I was growing up, while I was working at becoming a photographer, and there's a definite different beat when you're working with women. I learned a lot from that myself, and it's just you see things going on. It's hard to work. It's hard. Racism destroys a lot. It really destroys a lot. I mean, that's obvious to Afro Americans, but it's not so obvious to a lot of other people. And I know recently conversations I've had within Magnum, I've really distressed that a lot more. It's been a slow run, but it actually because there are good people there, of course, and that's now there's 3 African American photographers. Came in '83. This is the first time.
Yeah.
Not only that, there's a Muslim woman in Turkey that's doing really interesting work. There's a black brother in South Africa who's just moved up to associate, and he's really kicking butt, really, really well. And it just keeps on going. There's a Mexican American he's actually a Native American who's lived in Mexico for a long time and some really tough things, and yet his work is lyrical. So
Yeah.
what you don't accept, you help destroy yourself in some ways. That's the way I look at it.
Totally.
And when I was in Lebanon, I'm not going to go on and on, but in Lebanon, I noticed there's people from opposite sides that encourage me and help me at points, even though they might be really at odds with each other, but they certainly extended themselves, and that's something I was looking for, and it was there. So I mean, we need more of that here.
100%. So one of the conversations that's happening right now is hiring more Black photographers, hiring more women to cover assignments. And so some non-minorities would say, well, look, photography is objective. It's just shooting a picture. What difference does it make who's behind the camera? What difference does it make who's telling those stories? And so what are your thoughts on that? Do you agree? Do you think it doesn't really make a difference who's taking the pictures? Or do you feel like there should be a call to action for photo editors, directors, gallerists, curators to hire more people of color to cover diverse stories? What are your thoughts on that? And we don't have to go in a specific order. Whoever wants to talk first is cool.
If I say something first?
Sure, go ahead.
There were times when I was trying to get assignments and happened to deal with Black people, and I was told, you're too close to it. I mean, oh yeah, come on, really.
Wow.
And I've worked with so many editors that were not like that were, appreciated the quality of the work I was producing in a different way. I've looked at certain things than other people. It's ridiculous. I think it's ridiculous to say it's just objective, because you're a person, you're a human living being, and you have all kinds of experiences. Everyone has their own life form. Now, you may not want to know about someone else's reality, but the fact of the matter is it does impact on how you're shooting things.
Right.
I never think objectively. I can't. How can you? It's ridiculous as far as I'm concerned. I mean, if you have a heart, you have a brain, you have life experience, then you're going to want to engage in maybe something that other people aren't thinking about.
Right. It's gonna shape the story. Tomayia, I hear you. What are you thinking?
I think that we need to be able to tell our own stories. And I think that other people cannot tell the stories in our culture in the way that we can. There are obviously some cultural norms that we're used to and that other people may not even pick up on because they're not us, And so I think that it's super important that that photographers of color and Black photographers are actually the ones telling the stories.
Yeah. Jermaine, what are your thoughts?
I definitely agree with everyone saying on here. It's just such a lack of representation that it's like in this industry, they want to see people that look like them. They want that representation.
Yeah.
And sometimes when we see athletes when they're playing, or, you know, especially when it comes to the league, whether it's NBA, NFL, it's so one, male dominant, two, white male dominant. And a lot of people of color don't get that opportunity. And the thing is that when you're in the NBA, majority of those players are African American. So why is there any representation on the sidelines of individuals capturing those same people? Just like we just had an incident where there was a photographer that brought politics into it and got banned from it, but there are no other Black photographers sitting on that sideline. So we have to have that representation so that other photographers can believe that they have an actual opportunity of doing it. And sometimes with our cultures, we see things from a different perspective that we understand that others may not. And so I think that's very important. Hopefully, there will be more companies that will open their doors for us because we're amazing.
Totally. So just speaking on that, because I think about, like, I went to Yale for grad school, which is the top photography program in the United States.
Yeah.
And I was the only Black person in that program for the first and second years when I first started, other than Daoud Bey. And so thinking about that kind of narrative. So I want you to tell me, how many photo editors, directors, galleries, curators have you worked with personally who were people of color, right? And how did that shape your perspective? Was it different in working with them? Did you feel different working with them? Was it surprising? I know a lot of times when I go to events and I see more than 5 Black folk, I'm like, wow, right? Like, you're representing. Like, oh my gosh, you know? So that's what I want to know. How many of you all have had those experiences where you dealt with a photo editor who was a person of color, you dealt with a director or a producer who wasn't a white man, right? And how did you feel in that situation? What were your thoughts?
Well, I'll go first.
Go ahead, Eli. Yeah.
This
I
is
remember.
definitely an Eli question.
I remember a brother who's passed on now, John Shear. He was sort of you know who he is. You know who he is. He was basically mentored by Gordon Parks, and John is one of the coolest people I've ever met as a photographer, as a Black photographer. He's did amazing work. When Attica happened, he was inside. He was the only photographer inside, and the classic photographs are his. And the thing is that we're in a sort of a dangerous place in a way, because I think a lot of photographers are doing. I get tired of looking maybe sometimes at straight portraits, and that doesn't say much. But now you worry that a Black photographers can get dumped into that sometimes and without saying something. But then I don't remember what I was looking at earlier today in a magazine, and they had a lot of Black photographers kicking butt. It was wonderful to see. It was wonderful to see. So the funny thing is now that actually sometimes there's danger going forward, because you get a chance. Okay, if you're taking out the really good photographers, giving them a chance to do something, and they show what they can do. I was really happy to see that, because it's not words anymore. It's got to be action at the right way. Yeah. At the same time, we got to be careful that we don't dump. There's some photographers and white photographers, a number of them that I really believed in and have raised it, like Gene Richards. Gene Richards got actually razor bladed. He was working early on in a game, and he still kept on working close and things that people feel uncomfortable about. That's also an interest. I think it's important to show strong portraits, people have done, which is like, it just gives you more energy to see it,
Totally, 100%. Oh, yeah.
And yet the documentary part has to be there also, or Donald McCullen, who was like, he went to art school. He tried to go to art school, and we went to the same kind of art school, and said he's rejected. He said, I'm proud to say today, if I tried to get in, they reject me again. Yeah, he's knighted. He's been knighted. So it's Sir Donald McCullen now, And so
totally.
there are people that inspired me that did happen to be white, but of course Gordon, Roy DeCarbera. There's people. I mean, there's so many people, Black people, that I said, how did they do it? They did it by concentrating on their work. That's how they do it.
100%. Yeah. So Eli, Jermaine, have you had an experience where you work with a producer, or are there people, I love saying the names of artists that inspire, right? So people you've worked with, photo editors, producers who were of color that changed your experience in the industry, taught you that it was possible. I mean, tell me some of those experiences you guys might have had.
I'll say for me, honestly, when I first got into wedding photography, I did not see any representation or people of color. And I think it was because it wasn't broadcast out there. So you saw different companies that had these faces of everyone else that didn't look like me. So I never even knew that there were professional Black photographers out there until I actually got added into a Black wedding photography group. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. Like, they exist. And the one person that stuck out to me the most was Joshua Duane out of New York City. And I always believe in giving people their flowers and their credit, because the man tells a story unlike anybody that I've ever seen. And when I saw that, I was like, okay, so it's not just taking pictures, it's actually telling the story, getting caught up in the moments. And then I fell in love with Kesha Lambert, and I was just like, oh my God, her lighting is beautiful, her storytelling is engaging. And it just opened up a world of so many amazing photographers and producers. Benjamin from Yemen Studios with his filmmaking. And then I got put into the Tomayia Colvin Education group, where it was literally a community of so many dope photographers, producers, companies that actually cared about Black people, and to see them actually stand behind us and with us and champion for us was everything to me. So I think it's so imperative that we give other photographers and artists their credit, instead of always feeling like that we have to be in competition with people. Absolutely. If we really have this mantra and this mindset of community, I mean, we will further so much better. But I'm really loving these creatives that's coming out, even some of the newer generation of people. The thing that helped me learn was lighting. Darrell Hoshing out of Canada. We went to an event, and it was like 3 or 4 of us in a hotel room, and we have been inseparable ever since. And so these are amazing people that we have created these relationships with, and it's amazing bond. And I'm loving seeing everybody get their shine. To me, that's the most impressive thing.
Yeah,
100%. Dr. Colvin.
I've been in those places where I walked in and they were almost like, you're the hired help. Like,
oh, wow.
Yeah. Like they're looking for someone else, and I'm it, like, hey, yes, I'm here. And so, that has happened on more than one occasion, or in places where, I'm there as the lead and I have a guy as my assistant, and they assume that the guy is in charge. But I'm in charge, right? And so, just breaking down just that wall in itself, just letting people know that, Black women are leaders, and we should be recognized as such.
Yeah, no, definitely. And just thinking about Black women photographers or photographers in general, I'm used to be a professor. So if you're out there in the universe, write some names down, get your pen and paper so that you can name all these individuals. So that way, when you're on your Instagram feed looking for folks, you know who to follow. I'm thinking about artists like Latoya B. Frazier, Roy DeGarava. I remember being introduced to his work and just being blown away by the passion behind the work that he was making. Deanna Lawson, other photographers, Lorna Simpson, Renee Cox, just a number of photographers who are doing amazing work. So like I said, write these names down if you don't know them. So thinking about network, industry, equipment, when I first started in photography, I was renting my gear. I couldn't afford a camera. Yeah. I was shooting large format at the time. And, film, and it was all new for me. And I needed people to provide the opportunity and the network for me to have a platform and a voice. And so I want you all to talk just briefly about your story and your journey in getting into photography. This is a very expensive field, right? And there are people of color, there are women who want to enter this field but haven't gotten the opportunity to have those networks and those opportunities. We're actually going to start with Jermaine, because I know you were self-taught. Right? So like initially, how did you get the equipment, the resources, the platforms in order to create a voice for yourself?
Well, so before I got into photography, I was in marketing, and I noticed that there was a shift with the company, and like it was getting ready to go under. And so at that point, I made a decision to the money that I was making, I wanted to invest into my future, which I felt was going to be photography. And one of the biggest things is we have to, even if you work a full-time job, even at your job, work at your job part-time, but still work full-time on your craft and your passion. And so I started off with minimal gear when I first got in with my first camera. And I had like a 50, like a nifty 50, which was one of the most inexpensive lenses. And I was making magic with the nifty 50. And even today, I have well over so much equipment. And Tomayia teases me all the time, like, you always buying G Master lenses. You know, it wasn't always the time doing that. So, but I will say, I started off with minimum gear. I had a D, what was it, like 3300. It was like an amateur camera. But I kept going to YouTube every day. YouTube is a free platform. And what kills me is when photographers say, well, I don't want to learn on YouTube, or I don't want to learn from other photographers, because then I feel like I'll pull in their creative spirit into mine, and then I'm going to be copying and mimicking them. But it's detrimental to your own business, you know. And I've learned from some of everyone, and just kind of pulled everything in and kind of made it my own. And you don't need to have expensive gear to create an expensive lifestyle. And that's the first thing that I've learned. And working sometimes minimum actually helps you. So, you know, to all the photographers out there, if you're breaking into this, you don't need the biggest lighting modifiers. You don't need the 70 to 200 right away. Start off small. The 50 and the 85 were my lenses, and I couldn't even afford a wide angle lens at that time. So I just stepped back with my 50 and made my 50 a wide angle. So.
Oh boy. Oh, you know.
Eli, what do you tell me? Tell me a short story.
Okay. Actually, the first professional camera I ever was able to get hold of was it's a long time ago, of course, and I didn't have the money to buy this particular camera. It was a used camera with a 50 and a 200 millimeter lens. And my doctor, a black doctor, loaned me the money to buy this first camera and first professional camera and lens. And so later, when I did my book, Black in America, I of course went to him to give him a copy of the book. And I said, I just wanted to thank you so much for, helping me at this particular time. You know, he says, I knew you were good for it. So, I mean, that kind of thing felt really, really good. And, I learned early, as you said, keep it simple, use what you have, and you can make use of it. I also had a mentor who helped a lot that way watching him work, helping him in the studio. And it wasn't about getting paid for, of course, being a mentor, being an assistant. It was about learning how to see light and to use the equipment you have. So
who was your mentor?
Donald Greenhouse. He passed on a number of years ago. But he came up from a pretty tough place himself, and he became like a second father to me, which he didn't know. But the most important thing I learned also was it wasn't difficult to learn. Keep your mouth shut and listen hard. And
Yes.
when you have questions,
yes,
don't think you're hit. Just because I had this one photograph I really liked, everything was going on with it. I thought, the stance, and it's at a black barbershop, and I thought this is really neat. I thought I really I've gotten to some place that I'm really happy about. And I showed it to my mentor, and he said, not bad, getting a little better, getting better. But that was the right thing to say. But I learned to really listen, and I learned from everything that I could learn from, But just that my doctor, Dr. Wales, he gave me the money to get my first camera that could help me move forward,
Totally.
And that's important. You get help in all kinds of different ways. And like I passed on cameras that I wasn't using, that I felt somebody needed, including some Sony cameras, because I knew that the person would do really well with it. And there's one person I gave him cameras that did really great stuff in Minnesota, and then came back to Houston where I was working also. So it makes your heart get bigger Let's put it that way.
100%.
Yeah.
Definitely. And Tomayia, tell me how you got into photography. How did you have such a large platform right now. How are you able to create that opportunity for yourself?
So I am by heart an educator. Started out in photography, obviously as a teacher, and really had no intention on really becoming a photographer, honestly. I was going into a scrapbooking business and realized people don't print photos at all anymore. And so I really wanted to really change that. And so I actually just started taking photos for my clients to put in their scrapbooks, and quickly realized that this is something that is life changing, to be able to pass down a photograph from generation to generation. And so I took that path now. And so kind of, I was shooting for about 3 or 4 years, but the calling of education kept tugging on me, because that's really where my heart lies. And so decided to branch into also teaching as well. And so realizing that when I got started, there was not a platform for photographers of color that existed, or really a space for Black photographers. And so I took this really big dare to actually launch a platform for Black photographers, to give us that support and mentorship that we needed, and the networking that we did not have at the time.
Wonderful. So, Jermaine, I'm actually wanting to ask you about the Art of Confidence. I know that you're president and founder of that. Can you just tell us briefly about the Art of Confidence? And do you feel as though this platform has given you an opportunity to create more representation within the industry, or to at least bring more awareness about the lack of representation within our industry?
Yeah, so my Art of Confidence project, I started it late last year, and the goal is to restore the confidence of our youth and empower them. And so we've had many incidents of individuals that were denied school photos because they had red streaks in their hair, but Caucasian kids could wear blue streaks in their hair. We've had it where individuals could not graduate from school because their hair was too long and it was dreads, and something part of their culture. We've had individuals told your hair is too long, a 4-year-old, that in order for you to go to school, you had to either cut your hair or identify as transgender, and then that now that you can come back to school. So we have done, it's been insane. And a lot of it has been in Texas. And I'm actually headed back to Texas next week for a follow-up.
Eli is in Texas.
Welcome to Texas.
I'm in Texas too.
I know.
Give me a call when you get in.
Yeah.
Give me a call.
And so I said, you know what? I wanted to do something where I can provide powerful imagery that actually encapsulates how beautiful these individuals are inside and out. And one of the main things that we have is called the release. When I was growing up in the Black community, there was no such thing as mental health awareness. There was no such thing as, it was always, if you cry, I'm gonna give you something to cry about. Be a man, put your big boy drawers on, So I wanted to be able to give them a release so that whatever they were going through, that they could have an emotional release instead of holding that in, and then it comes out at the worst or wrong time. And that's where our signature shot comes from. But we've had some amazing individuals that have donated to our nonprofit. We have been on first name basis with the Detroit Pistons, the owner. We had amazing success stories. One is getting a huge contract with Disney. Another one is a member of the Detroit Pistons. The rule for Tink for his long hair, our project changed the entire school curriculum for how kids should be addressed or dressed when they come to school. And the hair the Crown Act and the Crown campaign actually gave us an award for that. So now I'm seeing more people doing more personal projects. And I tell people all the time, like, it's so many wedding photographers. It's so many portrait photographers. It's so many landscape photographers. If you create a personal project that's near and dear to you, you will effect change. People will resonate with your cause. And then what you'll notice is that it kind of separates you from everyone else. And you can give back to your communities and to your cause. And that is what literally, I believe, gets you to start leaving a legacy. And that's huge when it comes to this industry.
Definitely, definitely. And I also want to encourage our audience members to ask questions. As you can see, we are all Black panel. And so listen, we're diverse, but not necessarily diverse when it comes to race. And I think that questions and conversations around diversity include everybody, right? All advocates, all ambassadors. And so I challenge and encourage you all to ask questions, even if you're not a person of color, right? To give insight into your perspectives and experiences. So please do that. So right now we're seeing this awakening happening in the United States. And you talked about, the NBA, NFL, we have these institutions that are in many ways being forced to address their own role in creating systematic inequalities, right? And so many people feel like this kind of need for change isn't genuine, that these institutions are doing this because it's a trend. It's a fad. It's something they feel they need to be a part of so they won't look bad, right? But we're not seeing real change happening within their industries, happening within their institutions. And so as photographers, my question to you is, what do these organizations, photography industries, publications, what do you think they need to do in order to show that their ideas of diversity and inclusion, their ideas of representation are true and genuine? And this isn't just something they're doing because of pressure from society and this movement. Yep. They're doing it because it's a genuine need. I mean, I think about boards. I could say, I need more representation on your board, right? There shouldn't be one Black person and one woman of color. Like, that should be a change. Eli, what do you think? I mean, you've seen the civil rights movement. You've seen so many amazing things happen, across this time. How do you feel organizations can create real change and show that they're actually creating, real opportunities?
We need another John Lewis. That's one. And
we need another John Lewis. Yeah.
And it comes down to, as we're talking here, action, not words. Words have been put out there so often that I really, let's put it this way, I don't pay much attention to that. I pay attention to what is actually going on, and I work with a lot of good people who have people at top, so this is the way they go. And I just do the best I can, and you have talks with people. And it's like, that's one of the reasons I like John Lewis so much, because he did what he needed to do and was a leader to the rest of us, and you just have to put it in a straight language though, too, the why of it. That's the value of what's going on. I mean, I crack up when I watch commercials. It's like, you can see certain places where Black people are put onto where this is okay, but that's not okay. And I mean, a number of publications now, it's hard to see a magazine with a Black face on it. And again, you had the feeling, how long would that last? And there's a thing also of like, in certain situations, like one publication, which I'm not going to name, has had, they're just hiring Black photographers, which is great for Black photographers. I feel good about it. But at the same time, it's like you go to a certain level, suppose something fails, and then it's the words put out again. Well, look, they didn't do this, they didn't do that, which is not right, at all, of course. And so it's got to be real. It can't be haphazard or just, okay, yeah, let's throw it at the wall and see what sticks. That doesn't work. It's time for a number of people to put their big boys pants on or dress on, whatever. And the thing that you think this is a history this is a historical time in a lot of ways. Now, do you care what that's going to look like in the future because you did it for the wrong reasons and didn't really truly help someone? That's the thing. That's the problem. If they don't really do something to get these things to a place where they belong, which is in the garbage heap, then they haven't really done anything. It's like I don't know how often we talk about it. Words are still cheap as hell, and you got to go beyond that. I mean, this is the only way the world progresses. At the point I feel now, it's a bad time for the world in general, and yet things are going on. And I think it's not a coincidence that the countries with women running the country are working on. I'm sorry, it's the truth.
Yeah.
We have a problem here.
No, you're right. You're right. Tomayia, Jermaine, what are your thoughts? Like, how could these organizations show, and not just in diversity and inclusion panels, right? Like, how can they show that they're genuinely wanting change at their organization?
Yeah, so I had to
Oh,
write
I'm
down
gonna let my sis go first. Go
yeah,
ahead, Tomayia.
I just wrote down a whole list. I was like, let me just write it all down, so that I make sure that I don't miss a point. And so my very first thought is that Black photographers, as Eli will can definitely mirror this thought, is that first of all, we didn't just like show up a month ago, or 2 months ago. Like that's the first issue. Is that Black photographers have been around since forever. And so you have to acknowledge that our presence has been here. However, it has been ignored in the industry. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is that we as Black photographers are so much more than just a black box or a black square that you post on social media. And so for me, that's just a show. It's not really doing anything. It's just a, hey guys, look, here's a check mark. Look, don't be so pissed off at me. What I would like to see more than anything is that I want to see a change in your board of directors. I want to see change in the people that are hiring the photographers. I want to see change in mentorships that allow Black photographers to actually come and shadow these longtime professionals that have been here. I want to see diversity panels in your institution in which you are. And I want that those people that you are like pulling on to give you this advice, I want those people to be paid and not necessarily endure emotional labor for free at the expense of your marketing gain. And then if you're in this space and if you're in this for the long term, I would hope that you would create a safe space for your employees and especially for Black photographers and photographers of color that are in your institution, that are in your campaign, that are on your marketing team, that are in every facet of your organization. Because I would put money on that they have been feeling a certain way for a very long time and have been quiet, sitting there and not really saying their thoughts. And so one of the questions that popped up is that, how do educators, empower Black photographers of color or photographers of color? And that's just honestly just being there as a mentor, giving those opportunities that you don't necessarily see every single day. And being a bridge builder, not holding or hoarding all the information in, because I'm a firm believer that there is enough room for all of us.
Okay, awesome. And Jermaine, what are your thoughts?
I just think it's time for companies to put their money where their mouth is. The one thing I always learned is if you want change, it always starts with, I know it sounds bad or weird, but money. If you think about it, some of the most impactful people in the country and the world, if you want to impact the company, hit them in their pockets, right? So you cannot be afraid to speak against injustices because you're worried about your brand. And I've seen many companies do that, and they lost people because they did not speak up. They did not speak out. They lost many people of color when it comes to their actual brand, where people would literally having a fire sale like, oh, y'all don't want to speak out about Black Lives Matter. But then it got to the point where we had too many companies that were just giving out blanket statements. Oh, Black Lives Matter. Oh, we care. Oh, this. And then it became like a marketing strategy. And they learned real quick that they could manipulate with that. So for me, I love companies that actually pull the person to the side and say, what can we do to help you further your cause? And I'll name a company, Westcott. Westcott Lighting, even though I'm an ambassador, I wasn't even a full-on ambassador. I was just a partner with them. And they said, Jermaine, this is some crazy, this is the chief operator that called me and said, these are some crazy times we're living in. What can Westcott do to further this cause? I said, hey, I have an Art of Confidence project. I need these voices amplified. They, unlimited budget. Go out there to Kentucky, do what you need to do, whatever you need, it is yours. Don't worry about it. Sent out a videographer, full production team, full editing. And it was one of the most beautiful emotional videos from the Art of Confidence, which was Macy Hill's story in Texas. And I can tell you from that moment, I was like, man, I partnered with the right company. And for a company that will believe in you, but not just believe in you, put their dollars behind you, because there's a lot of people that'll say, hey, come tell us about this, but they know it's a hot topic, so it's going to get them a ton of views and everything else. So that's monetizing it. But are they putting money in your pocket? Do they actually appreciate you, and can they amplify your actual message? That to me
100%.
means everything. Yep.
So I want
Totally.
to
Go ahead, Tomayia.
Yeah, I just want to say one thing here is that it's super important, like what Jermaine said, about companies actually sponsoring and supporting artists and Black photographers and photographers of color on their projects, right? And so I don't necessarily, yes, you can start your own project as a white person, like that's a great idea, yes. What I really need you to do, though, is to really put your money behind the artists that are already out here struggling to make ends meet or to get these projects off the ground because they lack access to capital, and that's super important. So yes, it's great if you start your own thing, that's wonderful, but also get behind the artists and the photographers that are already out here doing things.
100%. So I wanted to backtrack on one of the questions that was asked. It's actually asked by Autumn in our chat. And she said, do you have any advice for educators on how to best empower people of color, students in photography? And so maybe Eli or Tomayia, you touched on it earlier, but what are some thoughts that you all have, in terms of, these students, these teachers, maybe even white teachers or minority teachers who are like, listen, I want to empower my students. What should I do? What can I do? Even though I don't have their shared experiences, to create change.
Well,
yeah.
For myself, I want to start a center of documentary photography and video, because that's a big, important part now. But a small place where particularly people of color, as long as others who are serious about documentary photography, could come together. And I had this idea of, I still have the idea. I don't know if it's how easy or it's going to be. It's right now. I'm not so sure how long I'm going to be where I'm at right now, but I think it's important also to help people who are instigating things, trying to do something now. It's also important that I may see a lot of possibilities. A few Black students I had at UT in advanced photojournalism that really had a lot of promise, but like one who's going into pharmacy, he's doing very well with that. But the others, it seems like they don't have a place to go to. My way was always come out shooting. I mean, come out doing something I care about and not worry about where it's going to go. And the first assignment I ever got for anybody was for Vogue magazine. And that's because I was working with an editor, with somebody who's assistant to somebody high up. And they liked the photographs I was doing. And they put together my first portfolio, for God's sake, and bought me a portfolio to put the pictures in. And then they asked if they could show that to their boss, and I didn't really know who they were talking about at the time, Diana Reeland. And I said, yeah, sure, and so then Diana Reeland looked at the pictures and said, give the kid a job. So that became my first assignment ever, and I was not really prepared for any of that stuff. But things like that keep on happening because people care. They see something, a light in you, and people go. I'm really happy with this. A lot of the students that I've taught at UT have gone on to very successful careers. In fact, there's Time Magazine did this thing with 34 top women photographers who influence photojournalism. I have two of my female students are on that list, and one is a number one, Meredith Kohat.
That's amazing.
And that's not just that. The male students have been progressing. I've been mentoring a lot of students. And there's this one, I remember her very well. She was a Black student who had a very interesting eye. And yet I have the feeling that, I thought about this for a long time. She must have gone through some real bad stuff before, because she sat well away from the other students. And I volunteered, on one assignment. I said, listen, I will drive you there. I won't say anything. I'll drive you there. I've done that for a few students. I've taken them to where their assignments were, where they wanted to shoot. I'd sit in my car and wait for them.
That's amazing.
And what I want to do is be able to mentor people, to be able. Well, I have two things. First of all, if you look at Magnum's Flow, you'll see more about what my work has been about in some ways, because I'm not really into Instagram that much. To me, it's like I see some. No, NSTEM is really important. It's just a particular place where a lot of work I'm doing, I'm thinking in my head all the time about possibilities. You know, I'm not going to give you what plans I have. But anyway, it's important that I really want to do this center. I don't know where it's going to be at. What's going to happen to it? I'll get it eventually. I'm going to have to figure out a way to get rich to do it myself because I can't depend on somebody giving it to you. I mean, there's some people I've gone to, and I got to get 2 of my books back to somebody. I was hoping that they at least have a talk, and I don't know if they even saw the books.
Yeah.
You know? It's just never-ending struggle, and you have to keep on fighting like you guys are doing. My fellow people here, right here. You know, we're in the same situation.
100%. I love the idea of the center. You know, I worked at a HBCU, which for people who don't know in the universe is a historically Black college or university. And, thinking about as an educator, how do you uplift? And I think Eli really touched on it, being able to go above and beyond. I mean, driving your students to their shoots, taking the extra time. So if you're an educator out there, I think it's important also to know that you're going to maybe have to give a little bit more, which is fine. I mean, Tomaya's sitting here shaking her head like, yes, as educators, that's what you do, right? You give a little bit more in order to make sure that your students, specifically your women and students of color, are achieving their goals. I want to make sure that we get through all the questions that were in the chat, and we have some good ones. This one is actually Travis to Jermaine. American history. Can you elaborate on the responsibility of a photographer with regards to preserving the history and making it stay forever? Yeah.
I think that's the reason why we are photographers, because we want to capture emotion, we want to capture history. And I'll give you an example. There's usually things that take place in America, and we're supposed to say, oh my God, that happened. But now we're like, oh, that happened again. We have been desensitized with so many things that's been taking place in the country and the world. But when you add a photo to it and you see raw emotion, you see someone's hurt, you see someone's pain, then you can draw into it and you can relate. And then you feel like, okay, maybe I can be a part of the solution, or maybe I've been a part of the problem. And when it comes to Black Lives Matter, and let me kind of get this out for some of the people that believe all lives matter. Here's a perfect example. Let's say you have a fire that's happening at a house, and a fire engine comes blazing down the street, and they get out, and you're like, well, why aren't you putting a fire out at my house? They're like, well, there's a lot of other houses here. Don't these houses matter? That's exactly what it feels like and sounds like when we hear that. So when we talk about the Black Lives Matter movement, we have to understand, and the people outside of us have to understand, that this movement is greater than just us. Because at the end of the day, we're all going to need each other, and we have to use photography as a tool of history. Because if we don't document these things, they're never going to happen, or it's going to be as if it didn't happen. And so I implore photographers, Black photographers, go out there and capture these moments. This is history. To my white photographers, don't just go out there to take photos.
Yeah.
Go out there because you actually want to help, because you want to use your privilege to say, hey, I believe in what they're saying. Because as Black people, we can't keep having a conversation amongst ourselves. We know it exists. We need everyone else that's not Black to take on this and say, oh, yeah, this is pretty bad.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. No, this is great. Thank you. So I want to ask this question really quickly. So, we're a panel of photographers and makers and leaders in our own right within the industry. However, we don't have the execs a part of this conversation, right? We don't have a lot of the people, the decision makers, a part of the conversation that we're having now. If you could put together a panel, I'm putting you on the spot, of leaders in the industry, who would it be? And what would you ask them, or what would you want them to talk about or elaborate more on? What are your thoughts? So if you could put together a panel, who would it be? And what would you want to ask them?
Well, it seems like right now, there's so many people coming out really fast because they want to get their pictures, people working to show that they're serious, right? Now, what happens is like you got to look who has the real power to enable that to keep going on. So I'd want to talk to leaders, the top leaders of companies, and have conversations with them, quietly with some reasonable exchange of information, because this stuff keeps on going on for the longest damn time. It's not something, like I said, it's not something new, and it at doing the in Houston at one point I had some problems with sunstroke, on the first day, and got through that. And at the funeral site the next day, I still was having problems with the sun because I just, I messed up as far as what I took with me to, but drink a lot of water, keep going. And when the corsage was coming through, and I was out there, I had gotten support from a head constable, police was helpful, and other people were bringing me water, which is really, really special, I thought, and when people were yelling, "I can't breathe," I found myself yelling, "I can't breathe," and I didn't even notice I was doing it until I was doing it, because it's really a time for you're tired of being tired. That's a great expression because it's true. It's true. So where do you go? You go to the top. You don't go to somebody down who can try something, but they don't have the power to change it. It's really a conversation to start right at the top and call them on. And let's have a schedule. What you're going to do.
100%. Thank you. Jermaine, Tomayia, do you all have any thoughts? Like if you could put a panel together of some leaders that you wanted to talk to, who would it be and what would you ask them?
Go ahead, Tomayia.
I was going to say that. I was like, yeah, this might be quiet on this one. I was like, I'm gonna just sit this one out. So my initial thought was that I would love to have all of the camera companies, all of the conferences that service Black photographers and photographers of color. I would like to put them all in a room and allow them the space to ask the questions, those difficult questions that nobody wants to ask. And even the labs, like anybody who services Black photographers, like whoever takes our money, I want to put all those people in a room. And I want to find out what are their actionable steps that they're going to take for long-term support of us. So I would put everybody in the room. I just need to get everybody in the room, Zoom call, whatever it is, to know what's your long-term plan or solution, and not just like for this week. What are you going to do long-term to support us? Because I think that's the question that a lot of Black photographers are thinking or feeling right now, that we don't want to be like, this is just a marketing ploy for like the moment. Right. And that we're like Black is in right now. So Black is Black. But I want to know that I'm important to you, and my life is important to you, and my son's life is important to you. And it's more than just someone purchasing your subscription or buying your camera or whatever it is, that you actually care, like in the deep down part of your heart.
No, definitely. I think about like Facebook has a new program where they're helping Black creatives. But in order to be eligible for this program, you have to have 10,000 followers. And it's just like, I understand. I understand the social media aspect behind it. But it's like, if you're really wanting to help Black creators and that is your goal, I don't think you need to look at the number of followers behind them, but also what is their voice? What are they trying to say? Because a lot of times that voice may not have been heard yet, So I think that for me, having people at the table who are diverse, before you create initiatives, before you create programs, like Jermaine, when you're saying they reached out to you and they asked you, well, what do you think? Have those people at the table before you make these decisions, because in all honesty, if you have a white table making a white decision about diversity, it's not going to reach the audience that you think should reach, right? And so I think about that Facebook program, I think it's great, but there's probably some kid who doesn't have 10,000 followers, but has an amazing idea and needs your support. So have people at the table that's going to bring that innovation and that insight.
Yeah.
So, we have a few more minutes left. I want to ask you a few questions from the audience, and then we'll end on a positive note for sure. So, which all has been positive the whole time, in my opinion. This is from Jesse. He said, "What does empowerment look like in an industry where people are?" And it's the word solopreneurs, I guess, new word for me, but really not necessarily
exactly
entrepreneurs, but solopreneurs. What does that look like in this industry?
So for me, who wants to go?
Jermaine, go ahead. Yeah.
So empowerment in this industry is so key. And sometimes when you get into photography, you feel alone. You don't always feel like you're going to get the help that you're going to need. I know and this is, for me, this is true. I feel like women are the most disrespected people on the face of this earth. And I say that because how Tomayia enters a room with a male photographer, they'll assume the male photographer is the lead and that she's the assistant. And what that means is there has to be people that are the upper echelon of photographers, whether it's myself, Eli, the big names in the industry. We have to amplify their voices. So those individuals that are looking to come into photography, this is why I literally let people, for no money at all, if they want to learn how to shoot a wedding, come to a wedding with me. Come hold the light. Come get direction. I'll show you. And I'm not charging them for that. I want them to learn and understand. And 9 times out of 10, I'll grab a black black woman so that she can come and learn, because I want her to be just as great. And I want her to be better than me. So I get it, what it feels like to be solo, but you want to get into a community that's going to embrace you, uplift you, and then let them amplify your voice and share your work.
Yeah,
totally. Tomayia?
So I'm gonna actually piggyback off of what Jermaine said. Obviously, coming to places like the Cookout, the conference that I host, that has a space for Black photographers, being in communities like my Facebook group where, Jesse's there and we go back and forth all day long, where you get support and, you're no longer by yourself, right? And so when you get into like a pod or your support group or a mastermind, where you have support of people who actually care about you, that's where you're no longer on this island by yourself, right? I know sometimes we think like, oh, I could do everything by myself, but you probably can, yes. But it's better if you do it with a friend or with a community group of people that support you, because you'll go so much faster with a little bit of help or somebody reaching their arm out to help you along the way, versus you trying to climb the whole bridge by yourself.
Yeah, I wanted to, before we run out of time, I wanted to read a statement from Clifford. And he said that I heard someone say racial
Deal and Khalid Allah. There's four individuals that are on my mind, and they're all reached a certain point, and I've been working with Russell for 20 years, helping him do stuff, and he's developed into what he needs to be. So I look at it that way. Companies come and go, but if you make contact with somebody, extended or a couple, like through Kamange, that's another connection. That sort of works for me. I'm not a group person all the time. I'm a joiner, but it's something that it's a complicated kind of thing. It hasn't gotten easier. It's getting tougher, and tougher. So basically,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, for me, I
would
say that just start at home. Have those difficult conversations. It's like, what can I do now? And my very first thought and my very first answer to that is always start at home. Start at your Thanksgiving table, start at Christmas dinner, Wherever you see those racial conversations or the weird joke that the uncle tells but nobody really addresses at dinner, say something and mention it and have those conversations with your kids, because the kids are the ones that's going to change the world.
Absolutely.
Wonderful, wonderful. So just to end on a more, I will say, just as far as motivation, moving forward, looking past the struggle in many ways and looking forward, what would you say to a photographer during this challenging time, whether it's COVID or this movement that's taking place? How do you move forward? How do you stay motivated and continuing to make work and really think about your voice and your platform?
Work your ass off. Lose a lot of sleep, but work.
Yeah.
On your own work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. So Jermaine, work your ass off. what are your thoughts?
For me, the short-term sacrifice is worth the long-term gain. And sometimes you just have to jump off that cliff and you got to build your wings on the way down. Stop listening to negative energy, negative folks. And sometimes the worst negative advice comes from the people that's inside of your circle and the people that you wake up next to each morning. So I advise you and implore you to go ahead and believe in yourself and grab somebody that's going to believe in you and y'all fly away together. It's enough sky for everybody to fly.
Yeah.
100%. Tomayia?
I'm with. First of all, Eli, I didn't know that we could curse, and so I'm happy that I just found this out. Yeah, thank you for that. But yeah, definitely, join networking groups, join Facebook groups, go out and shoot as much as you can, and don't be afraid to fail. And I need you to fully understand that you don't need to be afraid to fail, because we have all messed up. Everybody here has gone out and messed up on a shoot. Like, everybody has lost a memory card. Everybody has had somebody out of focus. Like, everybody has done that. So the most important thing is for you to go out and not be afraid to make mistakes. Actually allow yourself to make mistakes. So on game day, you don't make as many.
That's definitely. And I'm going to wait just a few minutes. We have a little bit more time. If there are any last minute questions or even statements that you all would like us to address. I mean, there's so much more that can happen. There should be a moving forward part 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, So, let me know. Are there any questions that you all have? Last minute, I see some statements, talking about the passion, enough sky for everyone to fly. Quoting Jermaine right now. We got some Facebook posts. Any last minute questions you guys have? Let me see. I'm going to look in our chat real quick. Just see if we have any last minute questions from some people in the Alpha Sony universe. Let's see. Someone said they love the honesty, and appreciate what you guys are talking about. The facts, these big facts, big stories. I'm just going to go and see, make sure we didn't miss any questions. There again, while I'm looking for those, please take out your phones. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook. These conversations do not stop. These are only the beginning. Get familiar with these artists. The work is amazing. Books. So I think we're all authors on this stage right now. Buy our books. We'll send some links so that you have that. Again, I'm a strong believer that we have to uplift the platform. We have to advocate for the platform so that other voices can be heard. And make sure you fund Eli's Center. You can make sure we have that happen as well. Okay, so I'm going to see if we have any more last minute questions from the audience. I see, just thank you so much. Let's see.
Thank you all for being here.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you guys.
All right, well, listen, thank you.
Look at Magnum Flow. That's one way to get inside the head.
Yeah,
definitely.
Hey, you know what I will say though? Shout out to Sony for when they did the Black Lives Matter. They didn't just say it. Like, when people were trolling and saying like all lives matter, like Sony was in the comments like, no, not until Black Lives Matter. Like, they were really stepping up. So
whoever that was,
shout out to Sony.
Game from the get go.
Right. Shout out to whoever was on that social media handle.
I was like,
definitely.
And also thank you, Sony, for having this panel and recognizing that it is an important discussion that needs to keep happening.
Absolutely.
100%. Thank
Amen.
you all so much. Be safe out there. Thank you again for having the conversation. I appreciate it. Bye, y'all.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.